appreciate it. All right, going live. You're live.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to the shop. Today, we are working again on the joinery window. This is a fun beginner's project that teaches joinery. And these are 6 different pieces of wood all joined together with 9 different joints. And it is a fun project to work through. So I made this one 2 or 3 years ago, and now we're going to be actually going through it all over again. It's kind of fun to do every now and then to see how your skills progress. There's the word. So last week we did the half lap joint, and this is a very, very simple joint. This is like the beginning of all joints. It's the 2 that then half lap. You get a nice tight corner. And this is great anytime that you have one needing to be supported by the other, and you're not worrying about any movement in any other direction. It's just one way. So it's only being constrained in one direction. All the others, well, actually 2 directions, but all the others will bounce out all over the place. So tonight we're going to do the next step up from the half lap. We're going to be doing the bridle joint, because in all of the world, it's never about the groom. Oh, come on.
You already got my reaction. You gave it to me early.
The bridle joint is the predecessor to the tenon. So we have one that has a mortise and tenon. So we have a tenon on this side, and we have half a mortise on this side, so it can slide in this way. So in this case, it's constrained in this direction, but it's not constrained to either slide out this way or slide out this way. So this is the next step up in corner. If you can make a half lap nicely, then this is just going to make it a little bit more difficult. You're going to have to do some chisel work. So tonight we're doing this. And this is going to be a fun one. And one of the interesting things about this is you have to spend a lot of time doing layout. Layout is the very important step. Getting good, accurate layout is the key to making sure that this is all going to come together in the end. So we're going to put these into the place where they are. We have this corner here done, and now we're going to work on the opposite corner. So we're going to grab 2 more pieces, and we're getting ready to put those together. Now before we go any farther, we are going to label these. So as I want to know which side is out. I want all of the sticks to have a blue stick on the face pointing out. And I'm also going to put a little bit of tape toward the corner that I'm going to be working on. And that way I know that this corner will then be the bridle joint. There's the word. And we're going to move on from there. So if anyone has any questions, throw those in the chat, and Sarah will be collating them and getting to that. I'll try and stop and answer. But this one's going to take a little bit longer, not as long as some of the other ones, but longer than last time, because last time we were done in 20 minutes or less. So first thing is, we're going to use a knife, which if you've been watching this channel at all, you know I love a good marking knife. It is so much more accurate than a pencil. And we want to transfer the thickness of one board onto the other. So for that, we're going to come back over this camera. Let me just move that in a ways. I'm going to set these on here, and I'll have one of them sitting on top of another board with the same thickness. And I'm going to line these up. Come on, wiggle in. Oh, sorry, it's hitting that one there. It's not moving on me. And I'm just going to line them up until it feels perfectly smooth here.
Do you not want that other board underneath it?
What's that?
Is the other board underneath it?
It is. It's holding up this end to be the same height as this.
Ah, gotcha.
And now I'm going to flush up this side, flush up that side. And I'm just going to put one mark here. I'm going to use the flat side of my knife. There's a flat side here and there's a bevel side. Put the flat side against here so I'll get a really clean reference here. And I'm just going to put one nick there. Now on this one, this will be my tenon piece. And this will be the mortise piece. So I actually need to cut a slot out of this end. So I don't want to put the mark on this face because I'm not going to be touching this face at all. I'm actually going to turn this around. And let me turn it this way so you can see. Let's do it this way. Flip it around so you guys can see. And this one, we're going to flush up on this end. And we'll put the nick right here. And so now I know the reality is I need to remove that much. And I have a stopped mark there. Now we want to carry these lines all the way around the board. So we're going to grab a square. And I'm going to start off, I'm going to get rid of these ones lest I confuse them. And I'm going to start off on this one and mark across the face. I want to get this line all the way across both of the faces at the right spot. So set it in here, light mark. That light mark means that we're not going to be moving this around at all. Come with a little heavier cut, and then a really heavy one. That'll give me a nice defined line. Lift it up on edge, and in this case, I don't need to take the line all the way across. I can just mark all the way across, but in this case, I'm just going to mark this edge and this edge, because I'm going to be having a tenon here. I want to carry it over, but now I don't want to reference this edge because before I referenced this one. So I'm going to flip the square around, so I'm referencing the same edge as I did before. I'm going to put my knife right into that mark I just made, slide the square up against it, clamp it down, light, medium, hard. Roll it over one more time, and put it right into the mark on the first side, slide the square up, mark a little bit on this side, mark a little bit on this side, and there is our depth of cut. On this one, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be referencing the side with the tape. I put this into here. Just going to make that mark all the way across here, but I'm actually going to make a little nick on this corner. Just a tiny little nick, so when I roll this over, I can put my knife into that nick, slide the square up, make one tiny little nick here. Now I can lift it up, put my knife into that nick again, and now I can make a good mark on this side that I know is precisely the same spot all the way around from the other side. So I know if I cut down to that line on both sides, it's going to be square to this face here. So now we've got our depth stops. We need to make our thickness cut. And to do that, we're actually going to pick a chisel. A lot of people are going to say 3/4 inch material. It means you need a 1/4 inch cut, so you have a 1/4 inch on the other side. Because usually you want your tenon to be about 1/3 the thickness of the whole body. Yes, that's great, but I don't care what that is. It could be any random number, something around a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to grab, it ends up being my 1/4 inch chisel, but if it's an 8mm chisel or something like that, 8mm? Is it 6mm? Something like that. I don't really care what the thickness of this is, because we're going to make that joinery match our chisel rather than trying to fit a chisel to match the imaginary joinery. Any questions while I'm setting this up?
Well, I'm seeing this new just subscribe thing showing up on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
So, which we've had several in a row. I don't know if that's an accumulation, but just so you know,
Is it still going?
Oh yeah.
Oh, here, let me turn that off because I bet that one's multi-feeding.
Because you can't. I just want to make sure
on the
you
other
know
channel.
you might not be able to see the bottom.
Oh yeah, and it just keeps going. Sorry about that. Let's actually just
That's new for me.
remove. You sure? Yes. There. Now it won't be going bonkers. Sorry, everyone.
Is it going to do anything or nothing at this
No,
point?
that was for the main channel because I had it on for Saturday. I forgot to take it off.
Okay.
So it was showing all the notifications that happened during the live on Saturday.
I was like, wow, we're really busy live today.
Yes. Sorry. So now what I need to do is I want to make those same marks on whatever marks I make on this board. I want to make on this board because I want to mark out the width of the tenon. So I'm going to come in here with my chisel and switch back over to this one.
We never talk about the width of a bride. You know that, right?
And I'm going to set this on here. I don't care if it's exactly in the middle. It can move over one way or the other. It doesn't matter at all. I'm just going to put this in here, and I'm going to put my knife in here, and I'm going to make a nick on this side. Oop, don't let it move. Put a nick on this side, move it around, and I'm going to put a nick in this side. Now that I've got those two set up, I can bring in my marking gauge. And normally I'd use my pins, but I have that currently set up for another one. So I'm going to bring this in here, and I'm going to slide that up. I'm going to lock one down in on this one. The other one I'm going to slide back over here. And I'm going to lock it down in on this one. And now I know those two marks are exactly the same distance apart as my chisel because I've marked it off of that chisel. Except for this one got bumped before I actually locked it in, so let's fix that. Right there. So with this one, I can mark, whoop, 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 we want to be careful of that. This is my side that I'm referencing, so I want to make sure that this is on that side. And we're going to mark one side, rotate it, mark the other side. There's a reason why I usually like using pins, because they don't follow, the knives and rollers tend to follow the grain. And I don't like that. It is annoying. Oh, that one's coming loose. You don't want these to spin. They should be locked in place. I should probably get out my Allen wrench and tighten that down, but I'm a bit lazy, so. And mark all around this. Any questions while I'm doing this?
Let's see. Tim Greenfield asks, what makes you pick a square bridle joint over a mitered bridle?
Mitered bridle is actually one of the next ones. So a square bridle joint is just an easier joint to make, and therefore more of the beginner joint, whereas the square bridle is easier than the mitered bridle. So we teach that first, and then we will come back later and do a mitered bridle. So once we have one down, then we can make the other one. Because if you can make a square bridle, the mitered bridle is just figuring out how to implement that miter. So on this the next one, I want to make sure I'm still referencing off the side with the tape. So I'm going to make my fence on that side and make the marks on that one. What's another question we got?
Well, it's not necessarily related to the joint, but are you good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, okay. So Marty Ben asked, I have a question regarding my Stanley number 118 hand plane. He cannot find a replacement iron anywhere. Do you have help?
Stanley 118. I can't remember what that is.
They were saying it's like a block plane. Where did I see? Okay, it was in the comments.
Whenever I'm looking for parts, if I can't find it on eBay, I go to handtoolfinder.com. It's a website that I've set up that is every known place I know of to buy hand tools. And on there I have a whole list of online sellers, and almost all of them have parts and pieces and bits. So if I'm looking for something, I'll go down that list and I will ask everyone and see who's got one, and if they don't, do you know anyone who does? Then usually I'm going to find pretty much any part that I want. So cool. Now we have our marks laid out all the way around this. All of our references came off the side with the tape. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut down the cheeks. So on both of these, we're going to make 2 cuts coming all the way down. Oh, they're on the other end. I'm looking here. I don't see any marks at all. It's the other end of the board. So we're going to make 4 cuts running vertical down this. And for that, I like to put them in my end vise. So if you have a leg vise or something like that, you can put them in there. And I'm going to grab my tenon saw, because lo and behold, we are making tenons. But before I go any farther, I am going to grab a marker, and I'm going to mark out the waste. I want to know where are the items that I'm getting rid of and where are the ones that I am keeping, because I want to make sure I'm cutting on the right side of the line. So this one is my tenon, and so I want to get rid of this piece, and this piece, and this piece, this piece, and then this one is my mortise, the slot, so I'm getting rid of that. I'm getting rid of that. And this will remind me which side of the line to cut on so that I'm not making problems. And let's lower this down. It's up a bit high.
It's a bridle joint. You're always going to be wrong. It doesn't matter.
Yes. So just like we did last week, I'm going to start on the far side of the cut. I'm going to get nicked in, and then I'm going to start lowering my hand until I get the pass all the way across. Oops, slid over a little bit. I need to actually back it up. So I'm going to lean it over so that my saw pushes that way. I can push my line back just a little bit. There we go. There. Oop. Trying to push it over just a little bit more. So I'm not actually cutting down. I'm just using the set of the teeth to push it over. There we go. Now we're in the cut. What I want to do is I want to cut down at an angle so that I can see the line I'm working on here and I can see the line on my side. I'm not going to worry about the back side because I don't see that line. So now that we have that in there, start lowering the hand down. Very important to chew on your tongue. hit my handle here. There's one side. Do the same thing on the other one. Bring this in and zoom in a little bit on it. And a lot of these, it's like rinse and repeat. It's the same thing.
Says the man with no
sides.
hair.
Yes. Back that up. Just a little.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yes. Now let's get it over there. Make sure I cut on the right side of the line. Almost cut on the wrong side there. Oop. Yeah. Double checking, triple checking. There we go. There we go. Cut down to depth. Now we're going to pull it out, flip it around. Sorry, I was on the wrong camera the whole time. And now we can cut down this one, staying on the right side of the line. I would ask if there's any questions, but I wouldn't be able to hear you. This one's going to need a little bit of cleanup, not a problem. So now I've cut down an angle this way, and I've cut down an angle that way. Now we're going to flatten it out and take them both down to the depth cut mark. Pretty close to the mark there, need a little more on the back side. Good there, good there. Oop. This one needs to go over a bit. So we're going to fix this cut before we start coming down. On the back side here, I was steering a little ways away from the line. So rather than trying to fix it, rather than going forward at that point, I'm backing up and I'm using the side of the teeth to scratch in and adjust that line. Before it was a problem. There it goes. Now I'm right on that line. There we go. And then all the way down. There we go. All the way to depth. What questions we got while I reset?
Let's see. Michael Curry stated, I usually set my mortise gauge by referencing directly on the sides of the chisel. Why did you use marks on the wood instead of the chisel?
The problem with doing it on the chisel is you can set the pins to be the exact distance apart as the sides of the chisel, but you can't set the fence the right distance away from the side. And so you end up setting the pins and then you bring it over to the board to try and get them in the right place, and you run into problems there. Whereas if you put the chisel on there, put the marks on the board exactly where you want to cut, then you can put these directly into your marks, and you have both the sides of the chisel and the side of the fence, all three locations you need on this in one time rather than trying to make it in the chisel. It becomes a bit of a fiddling act to try and match the chisel and then match it to the side of the board without changing your marks from the chisel. But there are a lot of great woodworkers who do it off the chisel. Not a problem with that. It's just I find it to be far more fiddly and introduces more errors. But personal preference. So on this one we're going to do the same thing, except for rather than cutting on the outsides of the line, this one we're going to cut on the insides of the line. Second verse, same as the first. Ought to get better, but we know how that goes. Got my groove all the way across. Now we can start lowering the handle. Follow that line. That off just a little bit, so I'm backing up, repairing the line rather than just trying to steer it back. Still off a little bit. I think the setter off on this saw a little bit because I tend to be veering to the left.
James.
What's that?
Switch cameras.
Oh, you want the smaller one?
Well, I don't know. Isn't that what you want?
No, I was kind of showing the whole body
Oh.
style of this.
Well, you kept talking to that camera, so I
No, I was just
assumed
talking.
you wanted it.
Just going to turn this over that way a little bit more.
Well, then stop looking at it.
Yeah, this saw is turning to the left a little bit. So I think my set is off, which means that I need to stone one side. Although this one's getting pretty dull, so I think I just need to sharpen the whole thing. I don't think I've sharpened this one in a year, so it's probably about time. Making sure. Good cut across. Start lowering the hand. Oop, yeah, we're veering off again. Same direction. Backing up, twisting the saw, fixing the problem before I get to that cut. Down to depth there. Now, rotate around to the other side. Yay! There's a laugh there.
It was an inappropriate laugh, and I'm trying to keep it clean.
Do I need to talk to some people?
Anyways, I'll just keep my thoughts to myself.
Get over. Get over. There we go. Now some people will stay a little off the line and come back and plane to it. And if your skill isn't quite there yet, then I would say that's the best way, but I like to go right on the line if possible. So I don't have to do any cleanup afterwards, or hope I don't have to do much cleanup afterwards. There. Oh wait, no, I gotta cut all the way down. Cut it 45 one way, 45 the other way, now I got the corner to cut out. More to the back side. There we go. Almost. There we go. Cool. So we made our cheek cuts. Now we need to make our shoulder cuts. What questions do you have while I set that up?
I don't have any new ones.
Ooh. I'm answering all the questions before they get asked. On this one, I'm going to grab a carcass saw, which has a cross cut. And that way we're cutting across, whereas my tenon saw has a rip cut because we're ripping the board. I know, it's really weird how some of those names work out.
You were talking about how you make it on the line so you don't have to do any chiseling out afterwards. And it's like, it's annoying how you can say that. For some of us, that isn't impossible.
So I said, it's the skills there. Staying on the line, if I have you in person and I can really guide you through how it goes, I can get you about 50% of the way there in an hour. The other 50% is going to take you another year of practice. And without someone guiding you, it's going to take you 2 years of practice. But if 2 years of constant use, most people can follow a line pretty easily with a saw. But it's just understanding, especially with a Western saw, the problem is people overcorrect it. And they make a line, and it goes off this way, and you have to bring it back this way, and it goes past the line over there, and you bring it back this way, and you start doing that zigzag thing, and you run into all sorts of problems. A Western saw is incredibly difficult to control because it's so easy to over-control. A minute twist of the arm in one way or the other can make it go all over the place. Whereas with the Japanese saw, because the active teeth are on the back side, it's very, very hard to control. You have to put a lot of force into it to make it move. But that means if you got it straight from the beginning, it's going to go straight down. And no matter how much you put into it, you're not going to make it go off course. So now on this one.
You did have a super chat pop up.
What we got?
Well, it's a question, so.
Okay, let me make this cut in the line. So that,
Okay.
starting on the far side, working back to my side. Nope, need a little more on the back side. There it goes. Just like that. Left a little bit of space there. Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to clean that up. There's a bit of a bow on this I can feel. I'll show how to do that. So what's the question?
So Russ, I'm not sure if it's Go or Gough. Sorry for the off-topic question, but regarding a small hammer for adjusting planes, what weight would you recommend for the hammer? 4 ounce, 8 ounce?
Oh, no, for a plane adjustment, like 2 ounce. Yeah, like here. This is my favorite plane adjustment mallet. It is basically nothing. It's
I was going to say, is the scale
very, very small. Yeah, it takes a tiny, tiny bit. A well set up wooden plane just takes a little bit of movement to make it work. So yeah, not much. Good plane adjustment mallets are usually pretty small. Now, as with anything, it can be a very personal preference, and some people do like a heavier mallet, but it's a personal preference, so whatever you want. So now we need to finish up the other side of this. Again, starting on the far side. Taking a lot of pressure off the saw because I don't want to go too far. And I think I'm actually going to back into this. I don't think I cut down
Russ's
quite
old
far enough.
ode to mom joke when you're done.
Ah, wait, what is it?
Are you going to be quiet?
Okay, I'm quiet.
All right, ready?
Yep.
I was applying for Australian citizenship, and the interviewer asked, "Do you have a criminal record?" I said, "No." "Is that still required?"
Break out. There we go. Yeah, this one's going to need some cleanup. My saw was going askew on that. I think it's time to sharpen the saw because it is not doing what I want it to do. So there's that one. And we'll do some cleanup on that in a bit, but we're going to do that when we actually get to the adjustment. Now on this one, I can't bring in a saw to get this out because it's in the middle. How do I get that out? And for that, there's a couple different ways of doing it. I like to do it on the bench top, and I'm going to hold it down with a hold fast, there's the word. Slide that in here. Grab a mallet, give it a tap tap. And then grab a chisel and the appropriate mallet for that. And we're going to come in and chop out. I'm going to stay away from the line, as you never want to get close to the line until you're actually ready to get close to the line. Make sure to turn this over to this side. There we go, that's a better shot. So I'm going to set this in here, and my line is there, so I'm going to move it 1/8 inch or so in. Tap, tap. And just like pairing out with dovetails, clean out that way. Then come in a little farther. And I'm going to do this down 3 or 4 times until it gets too deep and hard to work. And now, I'm going to come in from the end and try not to hit my camera. This is hard to do with the camera right there. Like that. Pull out this piece, and now I can continue down even more. So let's put it right in there. Come in at an angle, rinse and repeat. So what kind of questions we got while I do this?
Let's see. Andrew Seymour asks, quick tip, how do I adjust the mouth on a Stanley 151 spokeshave?
Those you can't adjust the mouth. They're the thickness they are. Most of the time with a spokeshave, you don't need to worry about the mouth that much, because with the spokeshave you don't go against the grain. Because if the grain's going one direction, you turn it around and you pull it towards you rather than pushing it, or you push it rather than pulling it. So you generally don't need to adjust the mouth on a 151. 151, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Stanley did make one that you can adjust the mouth on, but they're not very common. I have one of them, and I never use it. There's just no reason to. So now we tap in, remove another chunk, and I want to go down a little bit past halfway. But before we turn this around and come at it from the other side, we're going to clean this down. So I've gotten it down about halfway. Now I'm going to put it right into that mark. Actually, I'm going to come about halfway back to the mark. Hold the chisel vertical. Undercut a little bit, not a whole lot, just a little bit. And now we're down to depth there. So we can flip this around and do the same thing on the other side. Yay! What other questions we got?
Keith Brock asked, are Veritas saws worth the money?
Yes. Let's see, my tenon is, well, the two on my bench are both Veritas saws. They're not the best in the market, but as with any saw, it doesn't matter who made it. The only thing about how well the saw works is the last person to sharpen it. And you're going to be sharpening your saws, I assume so. And so your saw is only as good as your sharpening. Everything else is fit and feel and comfort. How does it feel to you? And so for me, the Veritas saw is probably the most cost-effective saw out there, price per quality. It's a great saw. Some people don't like it because it's not quite comfortable. Some people don't like it because there's a polymer back as opposed to a brass or a steel back. But functionally wise, it's a great saw. Same thing on the side. Stay away from it a little ways. Chop in. Let's attach that down. With the right mallet. Why are you bouncing? There we go. Got to teach that. Hold fast. Who's boss? My wife. Why are you laughing?
Because I'm the boss.
She is the boss. Chop in, pare out, chop in, pare out. It's a pretty well standard thing when it comes to most any chisel work. Actually, you need to go down a little farther. The grain's rising a bit. There we go. Ooh, getting close. I can feel it vibrating. Switch over to this one then. Oh yeah, I just watched it pop out. Come on, out, out. There. You're stuck. You can see how we chopped it down and came to that point that finally broke. And in this one, I'm going to do some paring out in here. The saw went a little bit off the line here, but towards the inside. So I'm going to set it right into that line. Go down to vertical. And there is our slot, but I need to clean this out. Inside here, let me open this up and show you. See if I can show you. Inside this gap, back up to here, there we go. This wall here feels pretty flat. This wall on this side here is actually sticking out a little bit. So if I stick my 1/4-inch chisel in there, most places it fits in rather nicely, but here it's jamming. It's not going in, it's not going in, and it's fitting in nicely here. So I want this to be able to go down all the way. So that's the next thing we're going to adjust. So what question do we have?
Kenny-Anjanette Horn asked, so how much is the 1 hour to get you started for the hands-on saw training?
Actually, I've done that for quite a few people. I mean, you know, if you're in the area and free and COVID isn't around, and then yeah, I have no problem with showing people that. I thought about doing a class. I'm looking for a file here. Where is it? There it is. A one-on-one class and offering that. But if you really want great advice, I definitely say go look at the hand tool school. Shannon actually does one-on-one training. And he has several really, really good saw technique videos. I have a couple as well, but they're not as good as his. He does a phenomenal job on it. So in this case, I'm going to grab my, my curved tooth Nerix file. This is a file, not a float, because the teeth are hardened. And I'm going to come in here. A file or a float is a two-hand tool. Grab one side, grab the other. In this case, this is slightly thinner than 1/4 inch. So up here I have a good bit of slop. Down in here it's actually pretty tight. So I'm going to use this to clean it. Actually I'm going to use it two-hand back here. There we go. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to tune it to that, but I want to make sure my chisel fits. It's still a bit fat there. Good in there. But I'm actually going to clean this out without that. The other thing you can do is grab a chisel and don't start right out here. Start inside a little ways. And with a little bit of stabbing motion, you can actually pare out the fat spot in the middle. I think I have it on both sides actually. Not taking off much, just shaving so. Flip it around. So I'm paring in about halfway. So inside I pared into about this far. And now I turned around so I can do the other side. That's pretty good. Let's bring this in again. There's that. Now let's see what we got here. Yeah, see, that's a lot better. A little bit stiff there. Just sliced my finger. Sharp chisel, such is life. So this is good to the point where we want to. And last week, I'm sorry you guys got gypped because my vertical cuts on that one came out perfectly. So I couldn't show cleaning those up. But in this one, they need a lot of work here. So any questions while I'm setting this up? Grab a couple tools.
Yes. Jose Morel asked, in your opinion, what is the best saw on the market?
It's a really personal question because, again, the function of the saw really doesn't matter to the maker. The thing is the comfort and the feel, and that is how does it feel to you. I personally really like the feel of the Veritas saws. They feel really good to me. A lot of people absolutely hate the feel of the Veritas saws. My favorite saw that I have is one from Bearcat Woodworking.
It's a nice saw.
If you refile the pack saws or the link saws, I really like those. I got a video on refiling this one, or reshaping it. Yeah, it really depends. I mean, Bad Axe, ooh, really nice stuff there. It just depends on your personal preference and likes. So on this one, we have a fat tenon. And
that's not what you say to your bride.
you can see here, I'll have it touch this side, and as I rock it down, it should touch the other side at the same time. But as I rock it, it starts to lift up. So what I want to use is the edge of this to get that down. And I can see where my high spots are. And I can see right here it's pretty good. But there's a big bulge right here, bulge this area. So I want to clean out this area. And I can do a couple things. Number one, I could bring in that file or float from earlier. And I can clean that down really nicely. Or I could come in with a shoulder plane. And I want to make sure I don't hit this edge and I don't hit the far edge because those are nice. So I'm going to stop just short of the other side. Now I've gotten that edge cleaned out, I can bring in my regular number 4. Except for going cross grain, you never get quite the clean cut you want. Is this one taking a heavy cut? Oh, that is taking a huge cut. No wonder I'm having problems. Sorry. Let me flip this back over.
Okay, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah, what we got?
So Adrian Bill asked, do you prefer the Veritas tenon saw to your antique ones, and if so, why?
I actually don't have an antique tenon saw. The problem with most back saws, most old back saws, is that they are very expensive. They're a collector's piece. And to find a good old back saw usually costs more than the Veritas. And again, those old ones will work just as well as this because it just depends on who is the last person to file it. And again, is it just comfortable to you? That is a very personal choice. Still need a little more. So, using the shoulder plane just to get close to the shoulder.
Okay, what camera do you think you're on?
The main one.
Okay, just making sure.
And now that I've set this a little bit lighter, we can come in with this. Come in from one side, come in from the other side. And I'm going to use that chisel again and check. Yeah, see, that's what I'm wanting. It still feels like it's a little bit fat. So another thing you could do is come in with the chisel, and just like with the other thing, with the mortise side, you can stab in. Come around to the other side. And we can clean it out this way. That should about do it. These don't have to be perfectly smooth. Smooth is nice. Smooth feels good, but it doesn't actually help the function much. There, that's pretty good. Now, the most important thing is, does it fit? And so here, oh wow, that is fat. Again, with calling the bride fat. That's because we did this side, so now we're going to flip it over. I think I need to do this side too. Yeah, that's got a big bulge there too. I'm going to have to do a good bit of work on that one. So let's actually use this. What questions we got? Well, I make a lot of noise.
I was just going to say.
And so now, I want it to fit. But you can see here we're pressuring it in, and it's just causing these to split out. I don't want that. And this is one of the biggest problems, is that you try to fit it in from one side. The problem is the opening on this, if you try to fit it in here, the opening isn't going to be there. The opening is going to be on the other side. So flip it over and come at it from the other side and make sure you're where you want to be that way. Oops, I want to turn around this way. So from that side, it's actually going in really well. So this side is good. I need to clean up the other side. No, I need a little bit of weight there. Setting the chisel in here to see if there's a high spot. And I do have a high spot here still. And I don't want to undercut the face of this because that's what the glue will attach to, is the long grain to long grain connection. I don't want to create gaps in there. Undercutting the shoulder, no problem, because that end grain, the glue's not going to do much there. And let's put that on there. Okay, there. Now we're good and flat almost all the way, except for right there, right on the tip. Just see. Ooh, took that down too much. We're going to have a gap. Oh no! See, that's feeling good. All the gap is now on the other side. This is going to be just going back and forth. With that last filing, I tried to hit the middle, and I put too much pressure down here and took off a little bit on that corner. So we're going to have a bit of a gap there. Such is life. What questions we got?
Okay, before I get to the questions, just so you know, we're just at the very bottom of the screen.
What's that?
FYI. I just want to make sure we're not going to cut anything off the bottom.
Bring this up then.
All right, let's see. So Alex has a semi-question, semi-statement.
What's that?
He assumes there are no rip saws for greenwood because logs are split and not rip sawn. Is that correct?
No. The old pit saws would rip down boards. The thing is, when you're ripping wood, you're usually just milling it up for lumber, and then you let it dry, and then you turn it into furniture and things. So the big saws would be like 8 foot long, actually they'd be around 6 foot long. Pit saws or things like that you would rip it down into lumber. You'd let it dry and then you'd use it. So yeah, that's why there aren't a lot of huge teeth. Like you have the big cross-cut saws that are cross-cut. You don't find those in rip pattern because you'd never use that to rip lumber. You'd use a pit saw, which is more like a frame saw is a very common one, except for it's much longer. So you'd have one person standing on top of the log, one person below the log, ripping it down. You can get, they did have large pit saws that looked like these, that were a single plate rather than a bow, but the bow is a little more common in most places. Okay, let's finish this thing up. Just trying to hit the high spots without hitting the edge. Let's see what we got here. That's pretty close. Except for it's supposed to go in this way. Although I don't think that really matters. See, coming in this way, it's getting fat. Flip that over. Yeah, see, I got some work to do on that. Why is it bulging out on there? See, I'm trying to figure out what it is doing here because it's bulging out in one place and not in another. So it's actually takes. What do we got on that, babe?
So you have a super chat.
What we got?
So Nate Long said, "Hey James, in Woodworking 101, we teach to not glue 2 cross-grain pieces. What about a bridle joint? Prevents the usual issues with gluing cross-grain things."
You can glue cross-grain as long as it's a confined thing. Something small like this, the expansion contraction, that's not a problem. I mean, you think about plywood. Plywood is huge cross-grain pieces glued together, but because they're glued together as a whole piece, the whole board constrains itself from that expansion contraction. That's why plywood is very stable. You want to try to eliminate cross-grain problems. But small things like this, that's not an issue. They're talking more like breadboards or stretchers going across a tabletop. Things like that can cause a lot of issue. Okay, so I'm trying to look into this to see where is it fat and where is it not. And it appears to be right on this corner. So let's address that. And it's one of those things that you just got to stop, slow down, and check the whole thing. Is that a super chat?
Yeah, that's what I just asked you.
Oh, cool. You get a mom joke.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I'm focused. I'm kind of bewildered why this one is such a pain. Most of them are not quite this far of a pain.
Must be
but hey, it's a great way to learn.
Today a man knocked on my door and asked for a small donation towards the local swimming pool. I gave him a glass of water.
Nice. It's getting closer.
Upstairs. All right, you ready for another question?
Yep.
So a poor man wants to know, why is it called a float?
Because it floats across the surface. Honestly, I don't know. My assumption is because it kind of rides across the top. It just hits the high spots. It doesn't hit the lower spots. But I don't know. This is really driving me bonkers now. It is not wanting to slide together. I think I'm actually going to tweak this. Let's go down this and see. Yeah. Nope, there we go. There's a bit of a bulge there. So let's work on this a little bit more. And less is more. If you want a nice tight joint, take it slowly. I'm not going to let this one defeat me though. Let's clean that out. What other questions we got?
Let's see.
Something to distract me.
Brandon Chennault asked, how strong would you say the bridle joint is, and what are the uses of it over other joints, like a standard mortise and tenon joint?
Bridle joints are great for like the tops of legs. So if you had a leg coming up, you can put a tenon into it, but you're going to get this tiny little piece up there that really has no purpose. And a lot of times I prefer just to open it up so that can go all the way in. Having that tiny piece of wood on top isn't going to support it that much. So stretchers into legs, it's a very common one. But really, just about anywhere you would have a mortise and tenon, a bridle joint is just a simpler version of that. A little more. What's next?
Let's see. Sean 2, I'm going to guess. Can you recommend a saw set for a dovetail saw? I have two. Both seem too big for such fine teeth. I recently fixed up an old Disston and it had no set at all.
Oh my word, I'm having problems with this. When you start getting into dovetail saws, there's a reason why I don't like dovetail saws that are smaller than like 16 ppi. There just isn't a reason for it. You get down to like 20 ppi and you have these tiny little teeth that are impossible to work with, and they don't give you any better cut. They cut slower. So I'm just not a huge fan of those tiny teeth. But if you need to set those, what you do is you get a regular file, a regular set. You take it apart, and the hammer that pushes the tooth, file it down so it's a smaller hammer. And that's what you do for it. Okay, this thing is really starting to frustrate me. Okay, so I've got a ledge in there. I've got a lot of work to do on this still.
Just making sure it's still the joint that's frustrating you.
Yeah. Ask me more questions. More things to distract me.
All right. One of the respects would ask, do you ever like to thin a tenon using a router plane like Paul Sellers?
I don't do it that much. You can. The problem with it is just keeping it stable. You've got to have a really good one. Because, I mean, you can do it on this. Let me show you how that works out. So I can grab the router plane. I can set that over here. Let's actually do some on that. And I'll show you why I don't do it that often. So, focusing in. Got a router plane on here. And if I reference it on this, let's lock that down. I can bring this in. And it generally does a pretty good job of telling you where the high spots and other problems are. But the problem is when I get out here, if I have any down pressure on this, I'm going to start digging in. And I can see that I'm already doing that. I'm taking off too much material down there. But I'm going to try and put all my weight out here and just push this forward. Yeah, I started digging in a little bit too much on this side. Let's try a little bit lower. And I can come in like this, yeah, and see I'm digging in there. This side is pushing down a little bit too much. And so I really don't like doing that because it takes a lot of really accurate pushing. See, I'm digging in there already too much. I start splitting out like that. I just, no, I don't like doing that. I'd rather freehand chisel than to come in with the router plane. Clean up that mess. That's just my personal preference. Does that mean that that's the way to do it? No, that just means that that's the way I do it. A lot of people really like using a router plane on tenons, but I don't. So, good question though. I have seen some big router planes that actually do that really well. Mine does not. See, when in doubt, flip it around. So it should go together this way, and it does. But the problem is spreading this out. I'm trying to find out where the spreading point is. But sometimes if you flip it around, No, that's actually pretty close. So that's the way it should go. If I flip it around so that the other reference faces out, now I'm spreading it. So that tells me there's something different between this and this. I want to see what it is. And I think it's that this face is bulging this way, and this face is bulging that way. So the two of them are bulging against each other. So let's actually come in and clean this one out a little more then. One more question? Or a couple more questions?
I have 2 more.
We're fighting for this one. This is not a happy one. So what's the next one?
James Crandall asks, do you have any additional insulation in your basement workshop to cut down on sound upstairs?
No. When I'm recording, I just tell people, stay off the wood floor. I'm actually like in a weird corner of the house, so there's very little that happens right above me. It's just the dining room. And my shop is actually concrete wall on 3 sides, and the garage is over there, and the other 2 are exterior walls. So it's just this peninsula sticking out inside the house. So it actually works pretty well here. Though in previous houses, yes, I have put up a large amount of insulation to try and mitigate that. That's getting closer. That's not. So it's supposed to go in this way. Let's see where we're rubbing. So we're not touching there. Touching there. So you got to take off a little more material there. Try it again. Do a little bit, Don't take off anything you don't want it to take off. I got to remove a little bit from here because it's not going down all the way. What else we got?
So Adrian Bill says, clarification. What purpose does the bit without the back at the front of the Veritas tenon saw serve?
The bit without the, can you say that again?
I feel like I'm reading a tongue twister. What purpose does the bit without the back at the front of the Veritas tenon saw serve?
It just makes it lighter rather than having more weight out here. The whole purpose of the back is just to keep the whole thing stiff, so you can use a thinner plate. So a lot of times on these longer ones, the back doesn't go quite out all the way. And you can get what are called halfbacks. They're like a small panel saw where the back actually only goes out halfway, and then the rest of it's just like panel saw. So it just makes it a little lighter, easier to use. Let's see. This is bugging me because it's so stinking close. If I take off much more material in any one spot, I'm just going to cause more problem than it's worth.
Don't cause me problems.
So I think I'm actually going to call it right there. One of the fun things about bridle joints is you can just clamp them shut. So any gaps you have, you can usually squeeze them out. So let me show you what I got. And I think I'm going to call it here. Because at this point, if I do much more, I'm going to start causing problems as opposed to fixing it. And when they don't come off the saw perfectly, that's an issue. So I'm going to sharpen this before the next live. But let me show you where we're at. So here we've got this on here. And I've got really nice tight shoulder there. Fairly nice shoulder here. It's a little bit of a gap. On this side, I've got a decent gap right there. And that's where I filed off too much of that tenon. But the rest of it's pretty decent. I'm not too unhappy with that. See that gapping up there where I filed off too much of that tenon. So that's pretty decent. I may come back and file this out a little bit more. Just a hair. I think I have a bit of a bulge right there. Let me just hit that one looking at it.
No, stop.
No, I just got to do this a little bit. Just this little bit right there. Otherwise, it's just going to drive me bonkers. Although knowing me, I'm probably going to come down here sometime this week and be like, let's fiddle on this a little bit more. Let's get this nicer. Yeah, that's a little better. There we go. What?
Harold Golden said, I just looked up stubborn in Webster's. It said, see also James.
When we were getting married, my father, who was officiating, started off the wedding. The two of us are up there, we're standing, and he's about to say the first things, and you expect the preacher to say, marriage! And my father says, these are the two most stubborn people I have ever met. He started the wedding with that. I don't know if it's true or not, but yeah, it's pretty decent.
Well, you know, the apples didn't fall far from those trees.
I'd say I might be off by a quarter degree or so. It's probably like a 32nd of an inch, 8 inches out. But that could just be slop in this, so yeah, I'll take it. There, bridle joint. It whooped my backside. So next week we'll be doing, dropping that there. Next week we are going to be doing the mitered bridle joint. Oh.
Uh-oh, you went dark.
Yeah, I hit fade to black. There you go. My marking gauge fell over and hit the button. So next week we'll be doing the mitered bridle joint. And the mitered bridle joint is very, very similar to this. However, it has a few things that make it a little bit easier because you're taking off material right off the bat. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with that. There's a couple different ways to do it. We're actually going to be making it the mitered joint that has a bridled tongue as opposed to the bridle joint that has a mitered face. Slight semantics, but it should be fun. So 9 o'clock, is there anything I'm missing?
I have 3, I think, good questions.
Throw them out. Let's see what we got.
Okay, Andrew Seymour asks, hey, why were you concerned about having it fit in all orientations if it only needs to fit in one?
I'm not concerned about it fitting in other orientations. What happens is if I turn it out and I flip it around, or I flip the orientation one way or the other, a lot of times that then shows the problem. Because if I have it going together, here it goes together this way, and it slides in most of the way, what I could have is if I flip one of those boards over, I could see that there were two bellies that were matching together, causing me problem. And if I flip it over, those bellies then are opposite directions, so they're either rubbing against each other or creating a gap between it. It just makes those things stand out to see where is the problem. So if you're always putting it together the same way, sometimes you're not seeing the problem that's on the inside. And you flip them around, it sometimes makes things a little bit more obvious to see where the problem is. Finding the problem is often one of the greatest problems. Something like that. What's next?
James Letner asks, could you use a scraper on a tenon?
Yes, yeah, you could. Usually my preferred method is chisel up close to the shoulder and then come with a plane and smooth it out. But there are 100 different ways of doing it. Find one that works for you and stick with it.
All right, last question. Jose Martinez Jr. said, do you think it's necessary to wet the wood so it swells and makes the joint look tighter? No, because when it dries, it's going to become even smaller and causes other issues. I'm not a fan of wetting the joint. There are people who like that. They're weird. It's okay. But no, I don't like doing that. I'd rather, no. Just my answer. So on that note, I think we'll wrap this up. Next week we'll be doing the mitered bridle. Sarah will not be here. Actually, it looks like my mother is going to come and do not
be on the
confuse
chat.
the two.
No. So you might be seeing my mom doing the chat next week. And the week after that, we're probably going to be doing the Q&A. So lots of fun to come. So anything I'm forgetting? On that note, see you next time. Bye.